Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about the phonograph in the music classroom. The invention of the phonograph would prove to be one of the most influential events that happened in music education history. In the 20th century, we saw a change in values in American music education. In the 19th century, the primary goal of music education was to teach students how to sing. In the 20th century, the focus would move from a more practical approach to an aesthetic approach. Music education would begin focusing on appreciation. Music appreciation would change perception of musicality. Being musical had meant that an individual could compose and perform, but now could also include to be able to listen to music intelligently. What this meant is that the listener would be able to tell the difference between good and bad music and explain why. Music educators agreed that students would need to listen to examples of good music before making any judgments or observations regarding music. This posed a problem in the classrooms. In singing classrooms, the teachers and students were only exposed to the music they made in class. The only other exposure to music that they had was available through performances of concert and marching bands. Performances were often few and far in between. Large ensembles were impossible to bring into the classroom. Most schools could not afford field trips to see these musical performances. Now that would all change with Thomas Edison's invention and development of the phonograph. In 1877, Thomas Edison applied for the first phonograph patents, and they were registered, paving the way for the development of an instrument that would be important to education. First intended for speech diction for businesses, the phonograph would soon reproduce music. It is doubtful that Thomas Edison knew the impact his discovery would have on entertainment or education. This video shows how his invention captures sound.
A telephone transmitter that led Edison to his most startling invention. He suspected that a vibrating needle point would leave indentations on a piece of paper, indentations that could then be played back.
They tried it, and it worked enough immediately, that is, they got a buzzing noise out of the paper when they pulled it back underneath, that they realized that this was a possibility. Then they sat down, and in thinking about it and its possibilities, realized they had just recorded sound.
Edison switched from paper to tin foil and actually recorded the human voice.
So by turning the tinfoil flywheel and getting a constant speed, you can shout into this machine. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece as white as snow.
The device is a marvel of simplicity. The human voice vibrates a diaphragm, moving a stylus, which leaves grooves on the tin foil. When the machine is returned to the starting point, the grooves cause the diaphragm to vibrate again, reproducing the original sound. In the late 19th century, no one even considered that sound could be reproduced by a machine.
All of a sudden, here was something brand new. You could record an event and then listen to it again. The phonograph made him the Wizard of Menlo Park. It made him world famous, instantly. In the end of 1877, the beginning of 1878, when people realized he wasn't lying, that he could really...
The popularity of the phonograph grew, finding its way into many homes. And also, anything that could be recorded could be played back and preserved into history. The phonograph would add new opportunities for students to listen to music. Francis Elliott Clark discovers that the phonograph by hearing a recording of singer Evan Williams singing All Through the Night. This was the same song she was teaching her students that week. Clark saw the potential of how listening to the recording could enhance how students learned the song. Clark convinces the principal to purchase a phonograph and becomes one of the very first teachers to use it in a music classroom. Clark became an authority on how to use the phonograph as a teaching tool. In 1910, she gave presentations on Victrolas in the schools at the Wisconsin Teacher Association and the Music Supervisors National Conference program in Detroit. She also helped establish the education department for the Victor Talking Machine Company, where she supervised the presentation of classroom recordings and assisted dealers in setting up displays to help music educators learn how to use the phonograph. Clark believed that all children should have the opportunity to listen to good music, the best music, over and over again. The phonograph allowed her dream to be realized. Right now, let's go over the benefits of the phonograph in the classroom. Well, first off, the types of music and level performance were not limited to the talents of the instructors and available musicians. The school's ability to bring in classical music were not limited to wealth or location. And also, with a collection of recordings, the phonograph could transform the classroom into a musical history museum. The classical music would also enrich knowledge to the students with classical music through repeated listening and expanded recordings. And also, the phonograph also explained and exposed students to other types of music, ethnic music in particular, such as early Western, Asian, African, and Arabian music. And the phonograph was portable. It could just go inside any classroom with no problem. Recorded performances conducted by the composer were also historical performances. So if you wanted to hear how Igor Stravinsky conducted Firebird or The Rite of Spring, you would get to hear how he did it, and it was preserved into history. Now, educators believe the ability to recognize good music could guide into the students' moral development. So recognition of good music would equal to good moral development. All right, right now let's go over with other music educators. So first of all, I'd like to talk about Anne Pike Greenwood. In 1913, Anne Pike Greenwood brought the phonograph into a rural classroom with positive results. Her students were previously unruly and musical. After a week of bringing a phonograph into the classroom, she saw a change in the students and they began to sing, whistle, and march. Discipline also improved. The source of classical music to rural area communities would have a big influence to otherwise rural areas that didn't get to see live performances. In 1918, Henry Tovey compiled a library of records and had them circulated to the schools all over Arkansas. The library of recordings consisted of voice types, orchestral instruments, operatic excerpts, folk music, sacred music, and also ethnic music from Syria, Japan, China, and Arabia. The school's demand for the records were overwhelming as they had a growing interest for the higher quality of music. Now, one of the things that was difficult for rural schools was the cost of the phonograph. The cost of phonographs and recordings were a problem for rural educators. Now, for instance, in 1917, a Victrola Model 25 would be $67.50. Equivalent to today's dollars, it would be $1,356.10. A more modest model would be the Victrola 6 at $25, but still a hefty price for equipment at $502.26. And in fact, there's a fact that Greenwood took over the janitor work in order to buy a phonograph for her classroom. Henry Tovey fared better, and he was able to convince the state to purchase the equipment and recordings for his program. In 1913, the phonograph made its first appearance in the college classroom when Mount Holyoke University purchased a phonograph and recordings. The same year, Professor Lewis Corrin of the University of Wisconsin used his phonograph for his lectures on Richard Wagner's The Ring. Other schools, such as New York University, followed suit. Textbooks were soon published to accompany recordings and served as guides for the teachers. Now, these titles included Victor's What We Hear in Music, and also Columbia's 1920 Graffanola in the Classroom, and also The Music Appreciation in the Schoolroom, and this was published in 1926. This recording that accompanied this textbook also used members of the New York Philharmonic. And another book that is mentioned is Agnes Winslow's An Appreciation and History of Music, which served a template for many other history and appreciation textbooks to follow. Today, music history and music appreciation courses are available in most liberal arts programs in American colleges and universities. Students are able to earn credit and earn a variety of degrees on a subject. The push for education, reform, and music appreciation was preceded by the invention of the phonograph. However, it was the phonograph that helped push music appreciation and liberal arts on a national scope. Thanks for watching.